I never thought I'd be writing one of these stories, but here we are. This happened last weekend at my niece Lila's 7th birthday party, and honestly, I'm still trying to wrap my head around everything that happened. The looks, the silence, the moment the front door opened, and what followed after. Some background first. I'm 29, living in Portland, and for the better part of a decade, I've been the family's punchline. Not because I've done anything wrong, but because I chose a life that didn't fit the mold. While my older sister Caitlin, 33, married with 3 kids, was busy creating the life our parents considered ideal, I was doing something else. Something quieter. And as it turns out, something real. I studied architecture, worked hard, traveled when I could, adopted 2 cats named Mozzie and Fig, and settled into a small but beautiful apartment with huge windows and a reading nook I carved out for myself. I made my space warm, inviting, alive. But in the eyes of my family, especially Caitlin, I was just playing house. That was her favorite phrase, actually. Playing house. She used it so often I could practically hear the quotation marks in her voice. Every time I mentioned a new DIY project, a recipe I was proud of, or anything remotely domestic, Caitlin would smile that infuriating smile and say something like, "Still playing house with your cats, huh?" And then laugh. Always with that laugh. The kind that sounds like it's meant to be lighthearted, but cuts you just deep enough to leave a mark. At family dinners, she'd make offhand comments like, "Must be nice not having any real responsibilities." Or, "You'll understand once you have kids, it changes everything." Our parents never corrected her. The cousins would laugh awkwardly, and I'd do what I always did. Smile, nod, change the subject. I didn't want to make a scene, and I love my nieces and nephews more than anything. Stirring up drama at a family gathering just never seemed worth it. But if I'm being honest, the worst part wasn't Caitlin. It was the fact that her tone started to catch on. Over the years, the rest of my family began to join in. My aunt once asked if Mozzie and Fig had graduated to bunk beds yet. My uncle joked about how my fancy throw pillows were probably the only ones getting action in my apartment. Even Grandma, who used to sneak me chocolate after dinner when I was little, had started asking me when I was going to stop decorating and start living. So I laughed along. I always laughed along. What else could I do? But what none of them knew, what Caitlin couldn't begin to imagine, was that for the past year and a half, I'd been building something. Quietly. Carefully. Something real. And while she thought I was playing pretend, I was actually learning what it meant to grow. To love, to become someone's safe place. I never planned to reveal it like this. I wanted to ease into it, to share it when the timing was right. But Caitlin forced my hand. And in the most unexpected, jaw-dropping way, the universe handed me the mic, and I took it. It started, like a lot of things do, with coffee. 18 months ago, I was attending a sustainability summit in Seattle. I had just finished giving a presentation on adaptive reuse in urban design and was emotionally drained but satisfied. I grabbed a latte from a corner stand and found the only empty seat in a crowded lounge area. I barely noticed the man sitting across from me until he spoke. "Your talk on green materials was the first one today that didn't make me want to switch careers." I looked up and found myself face to face with a man in his mid-30s, casually dressed in a slate gray button-down and jeans, his hazel eyes lit with a mix of humor and fatigue. "That's the nicest backhanded compliment I've gotten all week," I replied, smiling despite myself. His name was Daniel, and he was a civil engineer from Vancouver. We started talking, first about our overlapping careers, then about books, films, and eventually life. He told me he had a daughter, 5 years old at the time. Her name was Hannah. He didn't say much at first, just that he was raising her alone. Her mother had walked out when Hannah was still a toddler. No warning, no explanations, just a handwritten note and a ring left on the kitchen counter. It took Daniel months to recover, but through it all, he said, it was Hannah who kept him grounded. The moment that changed everything for me came when he pulled out his phone and showed me a picture. "This is her after we baked a cake last week," he said. In the photo, a tiny girl with curly dark hair and frosting on her cheek was grinning up at the camera, holding up a lopsided cupcake like it was the greatest achievement in the world. She insisted we call it a volcano cake because the middle collapsed, he added. There was something in his voice when he talked about her, a tenderness, a weight, a pride that went beyond the casual. He wasn't just a dad, he was her dad. Present, protective, patient. And the more I learned about him, the more I realized how rare that kind of love really is. We stayed in touch after the summit. Emails turned into texts, texts into late-night phone calls. And soon, weekend visits. But every step was slow, thoughtful. Daniel made it clear from the start. Hannah's been through enough. I don't introduce her to anyone unless I'm serious. I hope you understand. I did. Completely. When I finally met Hannah in person, it was a quiet Saturday afternoon at a local botanical garden. She wore a sun hat that was too big for her head and carried a tiny sketchbook in her arms. "She's been drawing all the flowers lately," Daniel whispered as she tugged at his hand and motioned toward a patch of daisies. I crouched beside her and asked what she liked to draw most. Without looking up, she said, "Ones with petals that look like stars. Those are the magic ones." That day, we spent 2 hours walking, talking, and collecting leaf rubbings. By the end of the visit, she reached out and slipped her small hand into mine. No fanfare, no announcement. Just a quiet act of trust that nearly undid me. Later, Daniel told me, "She doesn't do that. Not with anyone." I nodded, trying not to cry. It happened gradually after that. A few visits a month turned into every weekend. Then school pickups when Daniel had work. Then evenings reading stories while she curled into my side. And one night, after a nightmare, when I stayed by her bed whispering calming stories until she fell asleep again, she murmured, "Thanks, Mama Rin," before drifting off. Rin. That's what she calls me. A soft version of my name, it stuck. Daniel found us the next morning, both asleep on the floor beside her bed. He looked at me and said, "You're already part of us. You know that, right?" I did. I wasn't playing house anymore. I was building one. By the time fall rolled around, I had officially moved into Daniel's house in the suburbs just outside of Portland. It was a 2-story craftsman with a front porch swing, hardwood floors that creaked in familiar places, and a backyard just wild enough to feel like a secret garden. Hannah had helped pick my room, which of course was her way of choosing which room we'd share. "She snores a little," she whispered conspiratorially to Daniel one night, but not in a scary way. "It's like a sleepy bear. I like it." Living together wasn't perfect. I learned quickly that 5-year-olds have opinions about everything, from what color plates should be used on Mondays to how many stories are enough at bedtime. Hint, it's never just one. But I also learned that there's a kind of joy in the everyday. Packing lunches, brushing little braids before school, baking banana bread while dancing to whatever Disney soundtrack was on that week. Mozzie and Fig, my cats, adjusted better than expected. Fig took to sleeping on the back of Hannah's chair during story time. Motzi claimed a spot on the windowsill in the kitchen, glaring at birds and occasionally at Daniel when he tried to cook something without offering treats first. The space we built was cozy, warm, and real. Daniel and I didn't rush anything, but we also didn't hold back. We talked about our pasts late at night, when the house was quiet. He told me how scared he'd been when Hannah's mother left, how he'd sat on the kitchen floor for an hour after finding the note, clutching a bottle he never drank. I told him about my childhood, always feeling second best next to Caitlin, always trying to prove that I could be something, even if that something didn't come with a wedding band or a stroller. But the real proof came in the smallest moments, like when Hannah started calling me Mama without thinking. Just casually, like it had always been that way. "Mom, can you help me find my blue socks?" It took me a second to respond the first time. Not because I didn't want to, because I couldn't believe what I'd just heard. When I looked over at Daniel, he didn't say anything. He just smiled, wide and quiet, and reached across the table to squeeze my hand. Later that night, I asked Hannah if she was okay calling me that. She blinked at me, confused. "You are my mama," she said, her voice simple and sure. "You make me soup when I'm sick. You tuck me in, you love me." And just like that, I was hers. No ceremony, no paperwork. Just a quiet declaration spoken from a child's heart. Daniel and I began discussing what the future would look like. Marriage, adoption, The kind of words that used to terrify me now felt like stepping stones on a path I had already started walking. What we hadn't figured out yet was when to tell my family. The thought of introducing them to Daniel and Hannah was complicated. I'd spent years letting their words slide off me like rain off a coat, pretending it didn't sting. I knew Caitlin would have something to say, probably several things to say, but I also knew I wanted this, and I wasn't going to hide it forever. We decided to wait until we were sure. Not just about each other, that was a given, but about Hannah. We wanted her to feel secure before inviting the opinions of extended relatives into her world. So we waited. And in that quiet waiting, we built something solid. It wasn't a fantasy. It was home. It was Caitlin's idea to throw Lila a full-blown unicorn-themed birthday bash in their backyard, complete with a rented petting zoo and a balloon arch taller than her garage. She sent out the invitation via family group chat with a cheerful, "Hope you can make it, Rin. Bring your fancy tea cookies or whatever it is you playhouse people eat." I read the message 3 times before setting my phone down. Daniel, reading over my shoulder, let out a low whistle. "Subtle," he said. I shrugged. That's Caitlin's version of affection, passive aggression laced with sprinkles. Still, I said I'd go. Daniel and I had been talking about how to introduce Hannah to my family, and after some discussion, we decided this party might be the opportunity we'd been waiting for. "It's casual, a backyard thing," I said. "Low pressure, and if it goes badly, we have an exit strategy." Hannah, still battling a mild cold, stayed home with Daniel to nap, but we had a plan. If she woke up feeling better, he'd bring her by later, quietly, unannounced. "I want them to see," I had told him the night before. "See what my life really looks like now." He had kissed my forehead and said, "Let them guess until it's time." When I arrived at Caitlin's house that afternoon, I carried a gift that I'd spent nearly a month putting together. A custom-designed wooden dollhouse, hand-painted and filled with tiny handcrafted furniture. I'd even included 2 little cats curled up on miniature beds in the living room. I knew Lila would love it. She always had an eye for details, just like me. As I stepped through the gate, the usual chaos of family gatherings greeted me. Kids running wild, grown-ups trying to talk over the noise. A playlist of Disney songs looping in the background. I spotted my mom balancing a tray of juice boxes and my dad adjusting a crooked banner while muttering about duct tape. I smiled and waved, setting the dollhouse on the gift table and grabbing a lemonade. For a moment, I let myself relax. Maybe today would be okay. That illusion shattered 10 minutes later. It started innocently enough. Lila opened my gift and gasped so loudly that everyone stopped talking for a second. "This is amazing!" she squealed, running her hands over the tiny doorknobs and peering inside the rooms. Her excitement was real and infectious. But of course, Caitlin couldn't help herself. "Well, that's just perfect," she said, raising her wine glass. "Aunt Rin is still playing house, but now she's got Lila doing it too." A few relatives chuckled. I felt the familiar sting rise in my throat, but I bit down on it. "Glad she likes it," I said simply, kneeling beside Lila to show her the tiny bathtub I had carefully glued into the corner. But Caitlin wasn't finished. "Oh, come on, Rin. Don't be so sensitive. It's just, you've always been so into your little home projects. The throw pillows, the cats, the over-the-top meal prep. It's like you're starring in your own little Pinterest fantasy. One day you'll grow out of it, hopefully before you start knitting baby booties for Mozzie and Fig." There was a ripple of uncomfortable laughter around the backyard. My aunt glanced at me, then away. My cousin pretended to cough. Even my mom looked like she wanted to disappear into the petting zoo. I stood up slowly. "I'm just glad Lila enjoys it," I repeated, my voice calm but my heart pounding. Caitlin gave me a long, pitying smile. "We just worry about you sometimes, you know? Always baking for one. Decorating for an audience of cats. You've built this beautiful little life, but you're the only one in it." And there it was. The real blow. The line she'd been waiting to drop all day. I reached for my phone. 3:48 p.m. Daniel had texted earlier. "She's waking up, feeling better. Still want us to swing by?" My thumbs moved quickly. Yes, it's time. I slipped the phone back into my purse and looked at Caitlin, who was still basking in her moment. I said, brushing invisible lint from my dress. You're absolutely right. I've spent a lot of time playing house. She smirked. Exactly. But the thing about playing house? I said, my voice steady. Sometimes you get so good at it, it stops being pretend. Caitlin blinked. What? Then from behind us, the gate creaked open, and everything changed. Every conversation in the yard seemed to pause at once, like someone had pressed mute on the entire party. The gate had opened with the quiet squeak of an old hinge, and there he stood. Daniel, in his dark jeans and soft navy sweater, holding a sleepy Hannah on his hip. Her head rested on his shoulder, curls mussed from her nap. One arm curled around her worn-out plush giraffe. The afternoon sunlight filtered through the trees behind them, turning her hair into a halo. I felt my breath catch in my throat. Daniel's eyes met mine across the yard, and without missing a beat, he smiled. Sorry we're late, he called out casually, walking forward with the ease of someone completely unfazed by the silent stares. Somebody insisted on finishing her nap before coming to the party. Hannah stirred in his arms, rubbing her eyes. Then Hetty, her head popped up as she spotted me. Her whole face lit up. Mama, she squealed, her little arms stretching out toward me. The silence fractured like glass. I stepped forward, hands already outstretched. Daniel gently passed her over, and Hannah immediately wrapped herself around me, warm and familiar, her tiny hands playing with the pendant on my necklace, her usual habit when she felt safe. Hi, baby girl, I whispered, kissing her hair. Feeling better? She nodded into my shoulder and whispered back, Is this the party with the rainbow cake? I smiled and glanced up. Everyone was staring. My parents, slack-jawed. My cousins, frozen mid-sip or mid-sentence. My grandmother, hand on her chest like she was trying to make sense of what just happened. And Caitlin looked like someone had pulled the floor out from under her. She opened her mouth, but no sound came. Daniel walked over and extended his hand to my mom and dad, completely composed. You must be Rin's parents, he said warmly. I've heard so much about you. I'm Daniel, and this, he gestured to the bundle in my arms, is Hannah. She's our daughter. He didn't say my daughter. He didn't say this is her child. He said our. It was the first time anyone in my family had heard those words, and judging by their faces, it hit like a tidal wave. My mom managed to shake his hand automatically, still blinking like she was waking up from a dream. I didn't know, she said faintly. No one did, I replied calmly. We've kept things quiet, for Hannah's sake. Hannah peeked up and spotted the dollhouse still sitting by the gift table. Ooh, she breathed. Can I play with the tiny bathtub? I chuckled. We have to ask Lila first. It's her special day. Hannah slid down from my arms and walked straight over to Lila, her giraffe tucked under one arm. Hi, I'm Hannah. I really like your house. Can I play too? Lila nodded wordlessly, still wide-eyed. Within minutes, they were both on the ground arranging dolls and arguing about whether the cat should sleep upstairs or in the toy kitchen. And just like that, the party was no longer about the tension. It was about two kids playing. Daniel moved beside me, wrapping an arm gently around my waist. That went well, he said under his breath, his voice teasing but steady. I don't think Caitlin's breathing, I muttered. He glanced at her. Should I be worried? Not unless she explodes. Speak of the devil. Rin, Caitlin said tightly, stepping forward. Can I speak with you? Alone. I turned slowly, still holding on to Daniel's arm. Actually, Caitlin, unless you want to apologize for what you just said to me in front of everyone, I think we're good. Her lips parted in shock. You brought a child. You've been raising a child and didn't tell your family? I've been protecting a child, I said, my tone even, from exactly this kind of reaction. Before Caitlin could respond, a voice from the gift table piped up. My cousin Ben. Wait, Rin, is that your kid? Like, your actual kid? Before I could say a word, Hannah called over from the dollhouse. She's my mama. I picked her. Daniel burst out laughing, shaking his head. Hard to top that, huh? My dad cleared his throat. finally stepping forward. "Well," he said gruffly, "I suppose someone better introduce me to my granddaughter." He held out his arms, and to my amazement, Hannah ran straight to him. Daniel grinned. "Looks like she's already winning hearts." And just then, while the moment still hung golden and raw in the afternoon air, Daniel reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. I froze. "Daniel, I was going to wait until dinner," he said softly, loud enough for only me. "But now seems perfect." He dropped to one knee on Caitlin's perfectly manicured lawn, surrounded by balloons and paper plates, the dollhouse in the background, our daughter watching with hopeful eyes. "Rin," he said, voice steady, "you made this house a home. You made Hannah's world bigger and brighter. And mine too. Will you marry us? Both of us?" My throat closed, but I managed the only word that mattered. "Yes." The moment the word yes left my lips, it was like the world exhaled. Daniel slid the ring onto my finger, an elegant, vintage-inspired piece with a delicate gold band and a round diamond nestled in a halo of smaller stones. Simple, thoughtful, timeless. Just like him. Before I could admire it for more than a second, I felt a small weight slam into my side. "Hannah." She wrapped her arms around me and Daniel at once, her little voice muffled against my sweater. "We're really a forever family now?" I kissed the top of her head. "We always were. This just makes it official." Applause broke out around the backyard. Not loud or theatrical, but warm. Genuine. My mom was wiping her eyes with a crumpled napkin. My dad had a hand on Daniel's shoulder, nodding in approval like he had just handed over the keys to something precious and hard-earned. Even my grandmother clapped, albeit slowly, her expression somewhere between stunned and oddly proud. "Well," she muttered, "about time someone in this family got proposed to at a birthday party." Ben laughed loudly at that, clapping me on the back. "You know how to steal a spotlight, cousin." But not everyone was cheering. Caitlin still stood frozen, her wine glass trembling slightly in her hand. Her face flickered between disbelief and something else. Something messier. Regret, maybe. Envy. Or shame. She finally stepped closer, voice low but tight. "You had a whole secret life. A child. A man. And you said nothing?" I looked her square in the eyes. "I said nothing because for years, every time I shared a piece of my life, you turned it into a punchline." She blinked. I didn't mean—" "Yes, you did," I said gently but firmly. "You meant every joke, every jab. You just didn't think I'd ever have something worth protecting." Caitlin opened her mouth, then closed it again. For a long beat, she said nothing. Then her eyes drifted to Hannah, who was now showing Lila the miniature tea set in the dollhouse with great seriousness. "They're good together," she said quietly. "They're sisters now," I replied. "And I'd like them to grow up knowing that all kinds of families are real and valid." To my surprise, Caitlin gave a slow, solemn nod. "Can I—" she started, faltering. "Can I start over? With you? With them?" I studied her for a moment. Her posture, usually proud and unbending, looked different now, smaller somehow, like someone finally realizing the cost of her words. "You can," I said. "But no more comments, not about my life. Not in front of Hannah. She hears everything." She nodded quickly. "I know. I promise." We stood in silence for a second before she whispered, "I'm happy for you. And jealous, maybe. I think I got so wrapped up in being what everyone expected that I forgot to ask myself what I wanted." "It's never too late," I replied. Across the yard, Hannah squealed with joy as my mom helped her tie a balloon to her giraffe. My dad knelt beside the girls at the dollhouse, asking them if the tiny couch was comfy enough for the daddy doll. Daniel stood beside them, laughing, completely at ease among a family that had only just met him. And I, standing beside the woman who used to reduce me with a smirk, felt no anger, just a quiet, unexpected peace. Because she finally saw me, and I was done hiding. After the ring was admired and the cake was served, the party slowly began to shift from birthday chaos to something softer, more intimate. Conversations turned quieter, more curious. Eyes weren't watching me the way they had been an hour ago. Not with judgment, but with something closer to respect. Daniel and Hannah settled onto a picnic blanket beneath the shade of a maple tree, helping Lila and another cousin decorate sugar cookies with an unreasonable amount of frosting. I could hear Hannah's laugh, bright, high, unguarded, and I realized just how rare that sound had been before. She had always been sweet, but cautious. Now? She sounded like a kid who knew she belonged. My mom drifted toward me as I gathered empty cups and birthday plates. She didn't say anything at first, just helped. After a while, she murmured, "I kept waiting for you to give me a grandchild." I tensed, unsure of where this was going. She continued, her voice calm, eyes on the icing-stained plates in her hands. "And the whole time, you already had." I glanced at her. Her expression was soft, worn with a kind of guilt I hadn't seen on her before. "I'm sorry," she said, "for all the ways I made you feel like your life didn't count unless it looked like Caitlin's." I swallowed hard. I wasn't trying to keep secrets, Mom. I just needed time to make sure it was real. Safe, especially for Hannah. She nodded, wiping her hands on a napkin. "Well, it's real. I see that now. I've never seen her look at someone the way she looks at you." "She chose me," I whispered. "And you chose her," Mom replied, a quiet kind of wonder in her voice. Just then, Hannah came running toward us, a sprinkle-covered cookie in one hand, a smear of frosting on her cheek. She beamed up at my mom. "Grandma," she said like it was the most obvious word in the world. My mom blinked in surprise. You want to call me Grandma?" Hannah nodded, completely serious. "Mama says families are about who shows up. You helped me tie my giraffe's balloon. That counts." Mom's hand flew to her mouth as her eyes filled with tears. She crouched down and opened her arms. Hannah walked right into them. Across the yard, Caitlin was watching. She didn't look angry. She didn't even look sad. She just looked thoughtful. She walked over with 2 juice boxes, offering one to Hannah. "Want to show me how the bathtub works in the dollhouse?" she asked. Hannah lit up again. "Yes, but the daddy doll's feet are too big. He keeps getting stuck." Caitlin laughed. "Let's see if we can fix that." As they walked off together, I stood there in the middle of the backyard and realized something I hadn't dared to hope before. We were healing. Not instantly. Not magically. But for the first time, there were no walls between us. Just honesty, vulnerability, and maybe the beginning of something new. Daniel came up beside me, his hands in his pockets, gaze following Hannah as she animatedly explained her interior decorating choices to Caitlin. "That went better than expected," he said with a smirk. I nudged him playfully. "You think?" "I mean, your sister didn't throw anything. Your mom cried, but in a good way. And your dad offered me beer and grilling advice." "He only does that with people he likes," I said. "You're in." He leaned down and kissed my temple. "We're in. All of us." We stood there in silence, the sounds of laughter and chatter folding over us like a soft blanket. I held on to that moment, not because it was perfect, but because it was real. I had once believed I was building a life in isolation. But the truth was, I had been laying the foundation all along. For this family, this love, this unexpected, deeply beautiful home. It's been 6 months since Lila's birthday party. 6 months since the front door opened and my family finally saw the life I had been building in quiet, steady layers. Daniel and I got married 3 weeks ago, right there in my parents' backyard, beneath the same maple tree where Hannah first shared cookies and laughter with her new cousins. The weather was perfect. Warm, golden, with just enough breeze to ruffle the tablecloths and make the string lights dance. We kept it small. Just family. The real kind. Hannah wore a pale yellow dress, her curls tied with white ribbons, and carried the rings in a tiny basket she had picked out herself. At the last minute, she insisted on walking down the aisle with Mozzie and Fig in tow. Fig in a soft blue bow tie and Mozzie looking grumpy in a floral collar. "I need my brothers with me," she explained solemnly. She held my hand at the altar and whispered, "Mama, we're really doing it. Forever." Yes, baby, we are. The adoption paperwork is nearly finalized. Hannah will legally be mine by Christmas. But in every way that matters, she's been mine for a long time now. She calls me Mama Rin most days, just to remind me that I'm hers. She's even started practicing her new signature, complete with a heart over the I in her name. Our family has changed. Grown. Strengthened. Caitlin kept her promise. She started therapy not long after the party, and though the process has been slow, I can feel the shift in her. She's less guarded, less performative, more present. She helped plan the wedding and gave a short, sincere toast at the reception where she publicly acknowledged her past behavior and thanked me for showing her another way to live, another kind of happiness. "I was wrong," she said, voice trembling. "And I'm so grateful you didn't shut the door on me forever." My mom has embraced Hannah completely. They bake together almost every weekend. Last week, they made banana muffins shaped like tiny animals, and Hannah insisted we save one for Extra Grandpa, her name for Daniel's father, whom she now calls just that. My dad, he built Hannah a miniature workbench in the garage, just her size. They fix things together, which usually means hammering nails into wood that has no real purpose. But to them, it's a fortress, a spaceship, a bakery counter. They've found their rhythm. Our family has started using the word bonus more. Bonus mom, bonus cousins, bonus life. Hannah even started a little bonus family club at school, where kids with stepparents or adoptive siblings share stories and draw pictures of their families. At her last parent-teacher conference, her teacher said, "She's made other kids feel seen, like their families are just as special." Daniel and I are talking about having a baby. Not now, but maybe soon. Hannah is already lobbying for a little sister with your hair and my voice, but not Mozzie's attitude. She has made a list of names and is currently obsessed with the idea of calling the baby Clara Sparkle, if it's a girl. Sometimes, when the house is quiet after bedtime, I walk past Hannah's room and hear her softly telling stories to her stuffed animals. Ones about mamas who show up and cats who guard dreams, and papas who build tree houses to the stars. Her world is full now, open and wide, and so is mine. And if there's one thing I want her to carry with her, it's this. You don't need a timeline to be worthy. You don't need someone else's blueprint to build a life that matters. You don't need to shrink yourself to fit someone's idea of love. What I had before was good. My life with Mozzie and Fig, my tea mugs lined up neatly on the shelf, my quiet mornings, my solo vacations. That life wasn't empty. It was mine. And now? Now I have a daughter who chose me, a husband who waited until I was ready, a sister who is learning how to love without fear, and a family who learned that sometimes the most beautiful homes are built by hand, layer by patient, painful, joyful layer. I was never playing house. I was becoming a mother, and I wouldn't change a single thing. Now, if you'll excuse me, Hannah just asked for help constructing a 3-story pillow palace in the living room. Mozzie is already guarding the top floor, and Figs claimed the basement. We're busy building something real, together.